You've probably told yourself you'd see it coming, that you'd recognize the red flags, that you're too smart, too aware, too emotionally intelligent to fall for someone like that. And that belief, that exact belief, is one of the reasons it works. Because narcissists don't target the naive. They target the empathetic, the perceptive, the people who think they'd know better. And the science behind why this happens is far stranger and far more uncomfortable than most people are ready to hear. Let's start with what a narcissist actually is. Not the pop psychology version. Not the word people use to describe a selfish ex. The clinical definition. Narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosable condition characterized by a specific cluster of traits: an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for admiration, a lack of empathy for others, and this is the part most people miss, an extraordinary ability to read people. Psychologist Barry Kaufman at Columbia University spent years studying the traits that make narcissists socially successful in the early stages of relationships. What he found was not what most people expect. Narcissists, he found, are not simply arrogant. They are charming in a way that is almost surgical. They identify what you need most: validation, excitement, a sense of being truly understood. And they deliver it with a precision that feels, in the moment, like fate. This is not an accident. It is a skill. And it is specifically deployed at the beginning. Researchers call this phase love bombing. It is a period, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, of overwhelming attention, intensity, and affection. Texts at every hour. Plans made immediately. Compliments that feel almost impossibly specific. A sense that this person has looked at you, really looked, and decided you are extraordinary. And here is the thing that makes love bombing so effective. It does not feel like manipulation. It feels like finally being seen. Psychologist Dorothy Tennov spent decades studying what she called limerence, the state of intense emotional obsession that forms in the early stages of romantic attachment. She found that the human brain, when it receives a sudden and overwhelming flood of attention and affection from someone it finds attractive, responds in a way that is almost indistinguishable from addiction. The brain releases dopamine, then norepinephrine, then, if the relationship deepens, oxytocin, the bonding hormone that makes physical separation feel like withdrawal. Love bombing hijacks all three simultaneously in the first weeks of contact. By the time the pattern shifts, by the time the criticism begins, the distance appears, the version of you that was extraordinary starts becoming ordinary. Your brain is already chemically bonded to this person. You are not weak. You are neurologically hooked. But the chemistry is only part of the answer, because not everyone responds the same way to love bombing. Some people find it overwhelming, uncomfortable, too much, too fast. So who responds most powerfully to it? In 2015, researchers Zeigler-Hill and Vonk published a study examining the personality traits most strongly associated with romantic involvement with narcissists. The results surprised even them. The people most drawn to narcissists were not, as the popular narrative suggests, people with low self-esteem or broken childhoods. The single strongest predictor was something called high agreeableness, a genuine care for others, a strong capacity for empathy, and a tendency to believe the best about people. In other words, the more emotionally attuned you are, the more dangerous a skilled narcissist is to you. This is because empathetic people do something that makes them particularly vulnerable. When they see someone in pain, even if that pain is manufactured, even if it is a performance, they respond, they lean in, they want to help. And narcissists, who frequently present early in relationships as wounded, misunderstood, uniquely difficult to understand, are perfectly positioned to receive that care. You don't fall for a narcissist because you are broken. You fall because your capacity to connect is real, and they found it and used it. There is a specific moment researchers have identified across thousands of relationship accounts. It happens somewhere in the middle of the love bombing phase, and it is the moment the attachment becomes hardest to break. It is the moment the narcissist makes you feel like you are the only person who truly understands them. Clinical psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who has spent years working with survivors of narcissistic relationships, describes this as the false intimacy trap. The narcissist shares something, a wound, a fear, a story of past hurt, that feels like rare vulnerability. It feels like trust. And when someone trusts you with something fragile, something shifts in the brain. You feel chosen, responsible, connected in a way that feels mutual. But the wound is often not real, or it is real, but it is being deployed strategically, not as an act of vulnerability, but as an act of capture. And once you feel responsible for someone's pain, leaving becomes almost impossible without also feeling like you have abandoned them. The guilt is built into the structure of the relationship before you even realize there is a structure. Then comes what psychologists call the devaluation phase. The attention that was once constant begins to thin. The compliments that once came daily become conditional. The version of you that was extraordinary starts being compared unfavorably to others. Small criticisms appear, then larger ones. And here is where the psychology becomes particularly cruel, because the brain, when it has been conditioned to receive a reward, the affection, the attention, the feeling of being chosen, and that reward is suddenly withdrawn, does not conclude that the reward was never worth having. It concludes that it needs to try harder to get it back. This is called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same mechanism used in slot machines. The unpredictability of the reward does not reduce the desire for it. It intensifies it. The brain becomes more fixated on the reward the less reliably it arrives. The cruelty of narcissistic relationships is not the abuse. It is the cycle. The withdrawal followed by the return. The coldness followed by the warmth. Each return to warmth feels like the person you first fell for coming back. And so you stay. You chase. You try to be good enough to make the good version return and stay. You are not confused. You are conditioned. And the hardest part, the part that takes most people years to fully sit with, is that the beginning was not a lie in the way most people assume. The narcissist did find you interesting. The attention was real. The intensity was real. The feeling of being seen had a genuine basis. But what you were seen as was not a person to be loved. You were a source, a mirror that reflected them back at exactly the size they needed to be. And as long as you reflected them perfectly, you were everything. The moment you became a full, complicated, needs-having human being, instead of a mirror, you became a problem. Developmental psychologist Diana Fosha describes this dynamic as a fundamental confusion of being seen versus being used. The two feel almost identical from the inside, especially at the beginning. Both involve attention. Both involve intensity. Both can produce the feeling of genuine connection. The difference only becomes visible over time. In a healthy relationship, being fully known makes the connection stronger. In a relationship with a narcissist, being fully known with your needs, your flaws, your humanness intact is the beginning of the end. You couldn't have seen it coming, not really, because the very things that made you susceptible, your empathy, your capacity to believe in people, your willingness to be open, are not weaknesses. They are the best parts of you. And for a window of time, in the hands of someone skilled at exploitation, the best parts of you became the mechanism of your own undoing. Every person who has ever loved a narcissist felt certain at some point that they were the exception, that this time it would be different, that the version of the relationship from the beginning was the real version, and everything that came after was something they could fix. That certainty is not stupidity. It is hope. And hope in a relationship that was designed to exploit it is the most dangerous thing you can bring. The people who fall hardest for narcissists are not the people who love least carefully. They are the people who love too completely, in a direction that was never going to hold them.